I'm AJ.
I'm Randy, and this is Bourbon, Wine, and True Crime, a podcast where three exhausted but functioning friends sit down once a week to drink together virtually and discuss true crime. Hello, my one lady.
Hello, dearest. And once again, we are minus Sunny. We miss her.
We do. She's been busier than normal lately.
As my dad used to say, well, still says, because he's got so many dad sayings, she's busier than a one-arm paper hanger in a... Wait. How did it go? She's busier than a one-arm paper hanger in a factory. You know what? It's not funny anymore. Moving on.
You have to get clarification on what it is by the next time we record.
I really do. But we'll figure it out. We've got some exciting things going on in our lives. We talked a little bit about it last time. Our girl Randy is engaged.
Yeah, actually have the ring now.
It is.
We had to go get it resized.
Stunning. It is beautiful.
We're slowly telling people about it.
Yes.
Still haven't told my aunt that I want to do a black wedding dress, so we'll see how that goes over.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I love that so much. Oh my God. Yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
I am fighting against, well, I look terrible in white, first of all. Second of all, the whole purity culture bullshit is just really gross. And before anybody says anything, yes, I know the original history of the white wedding dress was because Queen Elizabeth or Victoria wore it to be more in touch with the community because white was the easiest color to get because it doesn't require a dye. However, it is morphed into this really ugly thing where it's like, oh, what's the bride's sexual status? Oh, it's white. She's pure. Ugh.
Yeah. It's off-white. She must not be a virgin anymore. like no thanks. I don't have time for that. And P.S. no, I wasn't. It's fine. But no, I love that. I love the idea of a black dress. I think that is very you. I think I'm here for it. And then like offline, let's talk about whatever you want me to do immediately for said wedding. If you need me to set up Zola, if you need, P.S. they're not sponsors. If you need me to set up anything at all,
I will be picking your brain about wedding thing. We'll talk about it offline. I just need to know. I got not a registry. Excuse me, an account with the knot, and I'm trying to do the list of who we want to invite, and then from there I figure we can pick the venue, and then photographer, catering, so on and so forth.
I'm so freaking excited. I'm so excited.
My first wedding, not my first marriage, but my first wedding.
So that means you're like 90% of Americans. It's good. It's good. In other exciting news, I got a new doggie.
Yes, tell us about
rescue.
Little Coco.
Her name is Coco, i.e. Coco Loco, Coco Chanel. She is so calm, like very opposite of my personality. Like I still haven't heard her bark, still haven't heard her talk, but she is so cuddly and loving and she's just precious. Loves the water. She's great. She's wonderful.
It's so surprising that she's quiet because she's like a lot of husky in her.
She does. She has a lot of husky, and you can see it in her heterochromia, one blue eye, one dark eye. She has the longer snout in comparison to Rosa, who had the shorter cattle dog snout. So that's really exciting. I'm super happy to have a new puppy in my heart and in my life.
I'm so excited for you.
I'm thrilled. And I'm still, seeing about the job and everything, and we're going to see how that goes. So
hope you hear something back after the weekend.
I do too. I'm hoping today or tomorrow at some point I hear some good news.
Fingers, toes crossed.
Yes.
Eyes.
Absolutely.
Everything.
Absolutely.
So this will be one of our longer episodes. Not enough for a two-parter, but this came across my news feed for reasons I'll get to in a second. But today I'll be talking about the mass shooting at ClubQ. here in Colorado Springs.
Oh, okay, let's go. That's a heavy, very heavy, but very relevant topic that needs to continue to be discussed.
I went
Absolutely.
I went down a couple rabbit holes on it. And I was very, very angry. I had a headache for a couple days. So we'll get started. In the late evening and early morning hours of November 19th to the 20th of 2022, 22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich walked into ClubQ, a gay nightclub in Colorado Springs, with a rifle and a handgun, multiple magazines, and wearing body armor. There was a dance party going on, so when Aldrich began shooting into the crowd, the gunshots were initially mistaken as part of the music until the club patrons saw muzzle flashes and people being hit by the bullets. When people realized what was happening, they attempted to shelter behind the bar and in the dressing rooms, but 3 people did not seek shelter, and I'll get to those in a second. Here's some background on ClubQ. It's located in the Springs on North Academy Boulevard and has been in operation since 2002. For a while, it was the only LGBTQ plus nightclub in the Springs. A 2021 article by the Denver magazine 5280 said ClubQ is a place where, quote, LGBTQ folks went for drag performances, dance parties, and drinks. The Yelp page for ClubQ says that it's an adult-oriented gay and lesbian nightclub hosting theme nights such as karaoke, drag shows, and DJs. ClubQ has been closed since the shooting, with the Facebook page saying, ClubQ will be closed until further notice. We will rise again as a safe space for our community. And their website, which is ClubQ Online, this will be in the show notes, has a banner that says, hate will not win, as well as plans for a tribute to the 5 victims of the shooting, as well as the 17 people that were injured that night. They're accepting donations for the tribute, and their GoFundMe will also be in the show notes. And they're also selling merchandise on the website that says, like, you know, ClubQ strong and things like that. In a news release, Matthew Haynes, the founding owner of ClubQ, said, it was 20 years ago that I fought through a very different time in our country to ensure our community would have a safe space to gather and commune. It has been 2 decades now that we have kept the doors open as a place where everyone, regardless of their gender identity or who they love, has somewhere to belong. To everyone that has asked me to reopen the club, I assure you we are working very hard to bring our home back. We look forward to being able to gather as a community once again. Shortly after the shooting, ClubQ released a statement that said, quote, ClubQ is in shock and in deep mourning with the family and friends who had loved ones senselessly taken from them. We condemn the horrific violence that shattered an evening of celebration for all in the LGBTQ community of Colorado Springs and our allies. ClubQ offers our greatest gratitude to those who moved immediately to stop the gunmen and prevent more loss of life and injury. ClubQ has always provided a space for LGBTQ people and our ally friends to celebrate together. We will always speak up for and support everyone's right to be themselves and be safe. We demand that those who spread disgusting rhetoric and encourage violence stop this behavior immediately before more people get hurt. We urge with everything in our heart for every person to do what they can to speak up for LGBTQ people and everyone's right to be safe. And
I just want to say that for those people who aren't speaking up, for those people who are staying quiet, who think that it doesn't affect them, that they don't want to hear it, they don't want to like know about it, like can't we just all be equal? When you ignore it, you're encouraging, you're not stopping the hate, you're not stopping the violence, you're not doing anything to make it a safer place.
mm-hmm.
So I just want to say that.
But because you have, if you're somebody that calls yourself an ally
Mm-hmm.
and you are ignoring it, then you're not an ally, because there's people that are against the LGBTQ plus community that are very vocal about
Mm-hmm.
it. And I'll get to that in a second. Like the responses to the shooting from politicians, like these big groups, was disgusting. And you know what? Not everyone that goes to gay clubs is in the LGBTQ plus community. I love going to gay clubs because it's safer, because I'm not getting harassed by these dudes. And I'm straight.
Good music.
Yeah, good music, good dancing. It's funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's just in my experience, it's generally been a safer environment.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that the only people that get hurt in these shootings are people that are in a community that you might not quote unquote agree with is dumb.
It's ignorant. It's very ignorant.
But yeah, so ClubQ is looking at, according to their webpage, they're trying to reopen in the fall. They're having a lot of advanced security protocols in place. So I'll be keeping an eye on that.
I apologize in advance if I start coughing. I feel like my throat is like kind of like closing up. I think it's so dry here.
Oh no.
So listeners, I'm sorry. I'm be like I do have some sweetened peach tea on my side, and I also have some Pinot Grigio to just kind of give me some social lubricant. So yeah, that's what's going on.
I have Red Bull.
Speaking of, are you drinking? What are you drinking?
Drinking my vodka. And then I also have Red Bull and green tea. I just have a lot of things around me.
I find that I have to have like set like a bottle of water, the tea, the coffee, the Coca-Cola. Like it's a thing. Anyway, but yeah.
Gotta mix it up.
Gotta mix it up. So anyway, sorry about that. Just wanted to apologize to anybody whose eardrums might be blown out by my excessive coughing. Go ahead.
I hope you feel better. There were 5 fatalities the night that Aldrich opened fire on a group of people that were just trying to enjoy their evening. And I found this to be interesting. So the shooting occurred, the first call went out to police at 11:56 on November 19th. And then the first officer showed up right at midnight on the 20th. November 20th is also Transgender Day of Remembrance, or International Transgender Day of Remembrance. It's an annual holiday observed on November 20th as a day to memorialize those who have been murdered as a result of transphobia. I don't know if he chose that day on purpose or if it's just a twisted coincidence, but that's something. After the shooting, Aldrich began identifying as non-binary, and I just want to emphasize that, after the shooting, Aldrich began identifying as non-binary and uses they, them pronouns, which I personally have a problem with because he's wanting to make himself part of a community that he targeted. And experts in online extremism have said that Aldrich's proclaimed self-identification could be disingenuous.
You think?
Because he was very vocally homophobic.
I think he had a defense lawyer that said, I think you should consider this for your jury pool and your public persona. And that's so angry.
But I'm not going to misgender anybody, however much I disagree with this piece of trash. So they will be going by
their pronouns.
Their preferred pronouns.
I'm just going to call them a piece of shit. That's what I'm going to call them.
Yeah, that's your pronoun, you fucking dickbag. What did I say the other day about when we were texting? They're a bag of severed testicles.
Yes, you did. And I laughed hysterically. And I was like, you know what? It's absolutely accurate in regards to this specific individual.
The 5 people that were murdered by this fucking coward were Ashley Poe, Daniel Aston, Derek Rump, Kelly Loving, and Raymond Green Vance. Derek and Daniel were bartenders at the club, while Ashley, Kelly, and Raymond were all patrons. Their families all said they were kind, loving people who had their whole lives ahead of them. And I actually have some quotes from the families. So
wait, can you I don't mean to like rub salt, but can you just say the victims one more time for me? My phone went off and I got distracted.
It's okay. Ashley Poe, it's Paugh.
Okay.
Daniel Aston, Derek Rump, Kelly Loving, and Raymond Green Vance.
Why am I getting this confused with a similar, or I thought it was this one where a father was there celebrating his daughter's birthday with his wife and their family. Her boyfriend was the bartender.
You're close.
That was a different one.
So there was a family there that was celebrating. It was a father with his daughter and his daughter's boyfriend.
Okay, so it was ClubQ. Okay, all right.
Yeah, so many mass shootings.
I know, like that's the really sickening part is like it starts to become which one is which.
There was a thing that I saw online where a woman whose son had died in a mass shooting or a school shooting was in a trauma support group. And one of the other women in the shooting, her son had also died in a school shooting. It was like 20 mass shootings ago, and her son had died a week ago.
Oh my God. 20 in a week.
It's yeah. So here's what Ashley Poe's family had to say about her. She goes by she, her pronouns. She was a mother. Her daughter, Riley, was her whole world. She loved her dad, her sister, and her family. Ashley was a loving aunt with many nieces and nephews who are devastated by her loss. Poe worked for a local nonprofit called Kids Crossing, which helps connect foster children to homes that included helping LGBTQ plus children find accepting foster placements. She would do anything for the kids, traveling all over southeastern Colorado, from Pueblo to Colorado Springs to Fremont County and the Colorado border, working to raise awareness and encourage individuals and families to become foster parents to children in our community. Daniel Aston, who went by he, him pronouns, was a 28-year-old, and he worked at ClubQ as a bar supervisor. He came out as transgender as a teenager, his mother, Sabrina Aston, told the Denver Post. He had so much more life to give us, and to all of his friends and to himself. He always said, I'm shy, but he wasn't. He wrote poetry. He loved to dress up. He got into drama in high school. He's an entertainer. That's what he really loves. Derek Rump, who also went by he, him pronouns, was a bartender at ClubQ. His sister, Julia Kissling, told local media that Rump had found a community of people that he loved really much, and he felt that he could shine there, and he did. She added, he made a difference in so many people's lives, and that's where he wanted to be. Kelly Loving, who went by she, her pronouns, her family said, Kelly Loving was another patron gunned down in the shooting. She was visiting from Denver. Her sister, Tiffany Loving, was told of her death Sunday by the FBI. She was loving, always trying to help the next person out instead of thinking of herself. She was just a caring person. I was really close with her. Kelly Loving's friend, Natalie Sky Bingham, said she was devastated. She was a tough woman, Bingham said. She taught me how it was to be a trans woman and live your life day to day. Bingham said that she had just finished speaking with Loving before the shooting began, and she said that Loving was like a trans mother to her. Raymond Green Vance, who went by he, him pronouns, was visiting ClubQ with his girlfriend, her parents, and some of her parents' friends. Vance had started a new job and was excited about getting his first check. At the time of his death, he lived with his mother and brother. Unfortunately, he never left the club. Raymond was the victim of a man who unleashed terror on innocent people out with family and friends, Vance's family said. His own family and friends are completely devastated by the sudden loss of a son, a grandson, brother, nephew, and cousin loved by so many. They said, Raymond was a kind, selfless young adult with his entire life ahead of him. His closest friends described him as gifted, one of a kind, and willing to go out of his way to help anyone. Excuse me. While the senseless murder of these innocent people is impossible to understand, it could have been much worse if it wasn't for the heroic actions of 3 people who happened to be in attendance that night. So I was getting different things with different sources, because a lot of what I heard was that Richard Fierro, tackled Aldrich. He was the one that instigated the stopping of the shooting. And then one of the websites said it was 3 people. It was an Army vet, which is Richard Fierro. It was somebody in the Navy, which is Thomas James. And then they kept just saying a transgender woman helped. Mm-hmm. And so
I remember hearing that in the news, like right away. Like it was like,
yeah,
that was an immediate, that was part of the news right away.
Mm-hmm. Oh, excuse me. I got the name Drea Norman off of one website, but they had Drea as using he, him pronouns. So I'm not too sure. So I'm just going to refer to Drea as they, them, because a lot of it said a transgender woman, but then other websites are saying he, him. And that trans people get misgendered in the media all the time.
But it could have been a transgender woman who identified as a transgender woman, but still was using he, him pronouns. I mean, that could be possible. I mean, I think any combination of those, in like people who want to be who they are, like just authentically themselves,
Yeah.
whatever they're comfortable with. Like if those are the pronouns they want, but they also have the identification of trans woman,
Mm-hmm.
there could be all a total variety of those types of um of, of of people, I think. So it's
No,
possible, but I agree with you. Let's use they them. Let's do that. I think
I
so.
I definitely agree. Just that Colorado is historically very anti-gay. So it wouldn't
Yeah.
surprise me if somebody was misgendered. Or it could have been, a guy that was in drag and then they said it was a
Hmm.
transgender. So I don't know, but I just want to throw
That's
that out
very
there.
true. That's very true. The news outlet could have made their own conclusions.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair.
So, and I guess when I was researching this and everything that I heard is that Richard Fierro was the one that initially, went after the shooter. And then I found one article that said it was actually a Navy sailor named Thomas James grabbed the barrel of Aldrich's rifle first. And hi, handsome.
Oh, Ruka Ruka.
Why are you crying? Hang on, let me let Ruger out. What are you
Pause.
going on about?
Pause for a drink. I'll just sing a song. For our listeners, I am drinking out of my 4th of July wine glass. Happy birthday, America. It's gonna be tomorrow.
Oh,
I'm just showing off my 4th of July wine glass.
happy birthday, America.
Happy birthday, America.
So sorry for the interlude.
That's okay.
So according to an article in the Associated Press, Navy sailor Thomas James grabbed the barrel of Aldrich's rifle, burning his hand because it was so hot, which makes sense because the shooting wasn't going on for very long, but he expended a lot of rounds. There were people that were shot 9 times, 7 times, still survived. So then,
Please never leave your house. Just don't leave.
dude, seriously,
I'm never leaving. I'm just
this
gonna stay
is
locked in my closet.
but the people that intervened, I'll get to me and Eduardo had a whole conversation about it last night because I was like, you would like to think nobody knows what they're going to do unless they're in that situation. And you could say, right. And I was like, I would like to think that I would be like one of these people that would react. I was like, but I don't know.
You have no idea.
And
You fight, flight, fear,
freeze.
like you just freeze. You don't know.
I hope to never find out.
Yeah. Yep. That right there.
He and Aldrich fell off of a landing and they were struggling over a handgun because Aldrich walked in he had a rifle and a handgun.
Of course he did.
Of course he did. Aldrich shot Thomas in the ribs and they continued fighting. Then Richard Fierro, who is the Army vet. Did you hear that?
I did.
It's the dogs playing.
Mom!
So Richard Fierro, he's the Army vet. He tackled Aldrich to the ground and began beating him in the face with Aldrich's pistol.
Okay, that explains some of the pictures.
Yes.
All right.
They beat the shit out of him. He went to the hospital, and it's crazy because I'll get something else in a second. Thomas James grabbed the rifle and moved it out of reach, and Drea Norman began stomping Aldrich with their high heels. So, like I said, Aldrich ended up going to the hospital. They kept him subdued until police arrived, which, like I said, the first call went out at 11:56. The first officer arrived right at midnight. So they beat the shit out of this guy.
4 minutes. That's impressive. That's good.
That's really, especially for, I think it was a Saturday night.
Way to go, PD, Colorado Springs.
The response was massive. And because so many people had to go to the hospital, but they responded surprisingly quickly. So when police arrived, Richard Fierro was covered in blood. The cops didn't know if he was involved in the shooting or not, so he was handcuffed and put into the back of a squad car for over an hour. Police could figure out what happened.
I mean, I'm not opposed to that. Better safe than sorry. You got to get everybody's information, all the witnesses. But I think it might be a little obvious who the shooter might be.
That was my thing. Because we were talking about it last night, and I can empathize that it was absolute chaos when the cops arrived. And they didn't know. You have 2 people covered in blood. One's, going to be Aldrich, who they had the shit beat out of him. And then you have Fierro, who's covered in somebody else's blood. So I understand better safe than sorry. But also an hour. This guy just witnessed a mass shooting, helped to take down the shooter. And it took you guys an hour. But you know what? I'm not a cop. I just know me personally, I'd be very upset if I was Richard Fierro and I'm trying to go to my family to make sure they're okay. And you're just sitting handcuffed in the back of a cop car.
Yeah.
But I'm not a cop. And I do want to give shout outs to Colorado Springs PD for reacting so quickly to it.
I do want to just add very quickly, and I feel pretty strongly that you agree with me, and Sunny as well. I am very much pro police. I have family members in law enforcement. Yes, there are bad cops. There are bad teachers. There are bad politicians. Is the system broken? Yes. However, I support our men and women in blue and black, and just want to say that.
No, I'm the same. I have a lot of friends that are cops. That is a job that I would never do because I lack the patience and the empathy that comes with that.
They're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. They're in a position right now that is walking on a blade, and they don't need any more hate from any more people. Yeah. So they're doing their best. Most of them.
My only issue is the whole thin blue line thing. Like if there's somebody in the army that does some sideways shit, that's not a representation of my community, and I'm not working to defend that person. And that's my biggest issue is but a cop does something that's heinous. And they're like, but you don't know what they deal with. Like, I don't care.
I don't care.
We could go down that rabbit hole with police brutality in the US, but no, I do support the police. The job that they do is terrible. I would never be able to do that.
Listeners, if you have a problem with that, then you don't have to listen. You can turn it off and go find something else. We don't need the comments. You can just go listen to something else. Okay?
You just keep it moving.
Cool.
So AJ, you alluded to this earlier. One of the fatalities, Raymond Green Vance, was Richard Fierro's daughter's boyfriend. And they were out celebrating, I believe it was her birthday. And I know we're kind of bouncing all around right now, as we do. But I'm just going to say this, because some of this stuff, and I'm going to get to this more in depth in a second. Richard Fierro was criticized for being out with his family at a gay club because he was grooming his children. Here's the thing. Every club that I've been to as an adult, they check your ID at the door. And you have to be 21 to get in at least. So these were all adults of drinking age at a club, enjoying a night out. And I'm just going to speak for myself as somebody who is approaching 40. I really doubt that Richard Fierro was like, let's go to a club. His daughter was probably like, let's go to this club, let's go out and celebrate. We'll hang out. And it's good on him for being a
supportive father.
Him and his family are not in the LGBTQ community. They just wanted to go and hang out and have a good time. And then this shit landed in their laps. So, oof. So, and I mentioned this earlier, one of the sources I found said a transgender woman helped to subdue Aldrich, and AJ, you said you'd heard that as well. Another one used he, him pronouns for Drea Norman, so that's why we're using they, them. AJ, can you talk about red flag laws?
I sure can. I will say, however, when you asked me to look up red flag laws, I interpreted that as dating red flags.
Oh, not like literal red flag laws.
And you would think that as many of the thousands of hours that I have spent researching, watching, listening to true crime and justice and forensics and all these things that it would have rung a bell, because I now in my brain, like, I can remember hearing about it, but I legitimately was like, okay, she must be doing like a dating crime, and like we're looking for dating red flags. I've also been obsessed recently with a comedian, Matt Rife, and he has several little reels and TikToks and parts of his stand-up comedy that talks about red flag. Shout out Matt Rife. So anyway, dating red flags are something you should be looking out for, and all of our listeners, if you have a red flag and your partner or the person you are talking to or dating has at least 1, 2, 3, if you get to 3 red flags, you need to send them packing. And I don't even need to go into what a dating red flag is. But red flag laws.
Did you figure it out when I sent you that little clip?
Yeah. Yep. When you sent me the email, I was like, oh, that's what she meant. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I said that too.
Yeah, blonde, ladies and gentlemen. She's very, very blonde. Okay. Anyway, so red flag laws are a tool that law enforcement and others can use when somebody is clearly at high risk of doing something with a firearm. But they can't be arrested. They can't be arrested because no crime has been committed, and they don't appear to need a mental health hold or qualify for one. Research has found that in about 80% of cases, people who commit mass shootings or suicide make their intentions known in advance to family members or friends via social media or other means. It's really important that if you are concerned about someone, and I threw this in here because as a person who deals with students, if you are concerned about a student in your school or you're a concerned parent, I'm a parent of a 19-year-old white male, so it's very present. Or an employer or somebody who's worried about somebody, know that there is a way to intervene to reduce the risk, but you need to tell someone, such as law enforcement, who can act. Okay, now I had some stats here. Where did I put them?
Elevator music.
Jeopardy. Okay, I must not have put them in my notes, but the statistics were staggering as the red flags that were known, they were seen, they were reported, and those individuals went on to commit very violent, heinous, aggressive acts towards people who had familial, romantic ties to those individuals. Okay, so with that said, regarding extreme risk protection orders, in brief, so this is more focused on where I'm at currently in El Paso. It is the policy of the El Paso County Sheriff's Office that once an extreme risk protection order is granted by the courts, member of the El Paso County Sheriff's Office will evaluate the entirety of the order, conduct a risk analysis to determine what resources and personnel are necessary, and establish operational plans to safely serve the order as required. Because in the meantime, the person who is worried is going to be totally fine. And so to wrap up just my little part, this is what you and I had communicated about before I understood what red flag laws were.
And not to, because this might get confusing. So you live in El Paso, and where the shooting took place here in the Springs is El Paso County. So two different places, two different states. It's kind of weird.
Correct. But I wanted to see what it was. And I'm thank you for clarifying that, because I forget that you're El Paso County up there and we're El Paso County also down here.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So this is what you and I had communicated again about before I understood what you wanted. Since 2019, Colorado has had a red flag law that allows citizens or law enforcement to petition a court to order the removal of firearms from a potentially dangerous person. Of the 19 states and the District of Columbia with red flag laws, Colorado among the lowest per capita rates of invocation of the law. In opposition to the Colorado statute, more than half of the state's 64 counties declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries, including El Paso County, where the shooting occurred. According to the Los Angeles Blade, quote, "It is El Paso County Sheriff's Office explicit policy not to petition for an extreme risk protection order, ERPO, or temporary risk protection order, TRPO, to remove firearms from at-risk people." I want to just finish this by saying it's not just firearms that are a danger to victims of domestic violence and intimate partner violence. It is other weapons that can be used. Um, and I will just refer to the most recent story in the news that happened in the last, I think, few days or a week, where a crossbow was used, and it was deadly. So, and she had a protective order. So it's not just firearms. It's anything that can be used as a weapon.
I think statistically, though, the majority of homicides that occur with intimate partner violence involve firearms.
Absolutely.
We'll have to do an episode on intimate partner violence if we want to go down that really shitty rabbit hole. So basically, red flag laws are supposed to be in place where somebody is at risk for doing something or is exhibiting behavior where they could be at risk, then somebody comes and removes the firearms so they can be evaluated. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
On paper.
And I have a lot of guns and I am pro gun. I'm not one of those insane people that's like, everyone should have a gun. I think we need to do something with the background checks, and not everybody should have access to everything. So I have seen where red flag laws do get abused, where somebody is seeking mental help for something and their family invokes a red flag law, not something extreme, just, they need help with something. They're in therapy. Red flag laws are invoked, their guns get taken away, they never see them again. However, this isn't a story like that, because June 18th, 2021, so a little over a year before the shooting, Aldrich's grandparents told him that they would be relocating to Florida. And this pissed Aldrich off because they would lose access to the material in the basement that was being collected for conducting a mass shooting and a bombing. Aldrich held their grandparents hostage and threatened to murder them. When Aldrich eventually let them go, they headed over to their mother's house. They had an hour-long standoff with a Colorado SWAT team, during which an armed Aldrich live streamed from inside and threatened to blow up the house in the neighborhood. And
that was a year before?
About a year and a half. This is June 2021. The shooting was November 19th, 2021. No, 2022, sorry. So like a year and a half. The neighborhood had to be evacuated. On the live stream, Aldrich said that they would be the next mass killer. After they surrendered, police found a tub filled with explosive grade material, including ammonium nitrate and tannerite. Handguns, ballistic vests, and gas masks were also recovered. Aldrich was arrested and charged with multiple counts of kidnapping and felony menacing. This is why I had a headache for 2 days. Aldrich pleaded not guilty and was released on bail a few days after being arrested. And about a month later, the case was dismissed because Aldrich's mother and grandparents refused to respond to any of the subpoenas. Judge Robin Chittum told Aldrich during the hearing, quote, "You have clearly been planning for something else." After the defendant testified about an affinity for shooting firearms and a history of mental health problems, the charges are thrown out during a 4-minute hearing in July of 2021, and the prosecution made no argument to keep the case active. Despite receiving a letter from relatives of the grandparents that Aldrich was certain to commit murder if freed, Judge Chittum granted the defense's motion to dismiss the case because the deadline was approaching to bring it to trial. There was no discussion at the July hearing about Aldrich's mental health treatment, violent past, or exploring options to compel Aldrich's mother and grandparents to testify. After the judge dismissed the charges, the case was sealed until a few months after the ClubQ shooting. So I looked this up. So
I'm sick.
So
I'm sick. I can't even. I
think if you're arrested for a felony and you're saying you're going to be the next mass shooter, I think that's a pretty okay way to take away somebody's firearms.
That's not a red flag. That's a neon fucking sign.
And they sealed it. So he was only, I want to say he was 22 or 21
Why
when he got arrested.
Why would it be sealed?
Because, and in a way, this does make sense. So if you get arrested for something and they dismiss the charges, they don't want that to be held against you. So since the charges were dismissed, they sealed the transcripts.
I hate all of this.
So he gets to go back home with his tubs full of tannerite. Later, one of Aldrich's neighbors, Xavier Krause, told the Associated Press that agents had interviewed him about a free speech website that Aldrich created that featured a series of violent posts glorifying violence and racism. Krause also said that after the bomb threat charges were dropped, Aldrich was bragging about recovering the guns, showing Krause some rifles, body armor, and incendiary rounds. Krause said Aldrich was, quote, talking about bullets that could pierce through police-grade armor. And it said it seemed like Aldrich was hoping someone would break into their home. And they just... And I don't understand, again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not in the legal system, but I don't understand how the SWAT team is called, the neighborhood is evacuated, you have a live stream of this, and because you couldn't get his mother or their mother and grandparents to testify, that you just dismiss the case. Because remember, for the red flag laws, they don't have to be arrested. They could have taken the guns, dug a little deeper, and he shouldn't have had firearms. And on top of that, you find this out after they're arrested. A lot of the guns that they had were called ghost guns because he'd gotten $30,000 for, I couldn't figure out what it was for, but he'd bought all these really fancy 3D printers, and you could 3D print gun parts using those.
Yep, you can.
And their mother, also bought them a pistol so they could circumvent the background checks that happened in the state.
I'm texting my cousin who's an officer, and I'm just like, I love you. I'm double.
That's so bad. So on December 6, 2022, Aldrich was charged with 305 criminal counts, including 5 counts of first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, assault of the first and second degree, and hate crimes. In January of this year, they were charged with additional felony offenses for attempted murder and hate crimes, which brought the total charges up to 317. And that's the most charges in the state, or second most charges in the state. The first most was the Aurora movie theater shooting. So this came up on my timeline because just last Monday, Judge Michael McHenry sentenced Aldrich to 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole and an additional 2,208 years in prison for the attempted murder charges. I have a podcast that I listen to that I'm not going to throw shade at, but they always get consecutive and concurrent confused. So consecutive is it's back to back. So one life sentence, you start the next one. Concurrent is it's all at the same time. So he's not getting out. Colorado has abolished the death penalty, but it could still be on the table for Aldrich if federal prosecutors choose to prosecute them for hate crime, because the death penalty is still federally legal.
Yes.
So if you weren't mad enough, I want to get to the responses that happened after the shooting. Excuse me.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, you're going to love this.
Hold on. Hold on.
Take a healthy swig. So the shooting was condemned by certain politicians in the immediate aftermath. President Joe Biden said, quote, while no motive in this attack is yet clear, we know that the LGBTQ plus community has been subjected to horrific hate violence in recent years. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, oh, thanks, because I would mess that up, said that anti-LGBT political discourse is partially to blame for the shooting. The El Paso County governor said, quote, we are deeply saddened by the senseless shooting that occurred early this morning in Colorado Springs at ClubQ and sent condolences to support victims' families. Colorado's red flag
condolences don't bring people back.
That's exactly what the founder says later. He's like, you're saying thoughts and prayers aren't protecting us.
F off.
Yeah. Colorado's red flag law and its applications were scrutinized by advocates of gun violence prevention, politicians, and others. Governor Jared Polis, the nation's first openly gay governor, which is here, said, quote, we are eternally grateful for the brave individuals who blocked the shooter, likely saving lives in the process, and called for an examination of the application of Colorado's red flag law by Colorado's sheriffs. Colorado Springs Mayor John Suthers said law enforcement should take advantage of the law under appropriate circumstances, while cautioning against jumping to conclusions about the application of the law to this shooting. Colorado State Representative Tom Sullivan, whose son was killed in the 2012 Aurora, Colorado shooting and sponsor of the state's red flag law, said the prior incident should have alerted the community. Jeffrey Swanson, a professor at Duke University School of Medicine who studies red flag laws, said Colorado's law should have been invoked, or could have been invoked. LGBT groups have been widely excuse me. LGBT groups have widely memorialized the victims and linked the mass shooting to recent rhetoric. ClubQ said on social media that it was, quote, devastated by the senseless attack on our community, and that it offered condolences to the victims and their families. The co-owners of ClubQ attributed the shooting to a different kind of anti-LGBT hatred, inflamed by some Republican politicians and right-wing influencers, and rooted in the demonization of drag queens as, quote unquote, groomers. Democrats have also been criticized by some for historically not doing enough to counteract anti-trans narratives and generally being reluctant to proactively defend the transgender community. So this wasn't in the notes, but Aldrich and their mother were a part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but they weren't. The church said that they hadn't been active in years. But after the statement, the church released a statement condemning the shooting. The statement read in part.
Thanks.
Love that. The statement read in part, quote, the senseless act of violence in Colorado Springs is of great sadness and concern to us. We are greatly troubled by any violence in our communities and condemn most especially violent acts that are the result of intolerance. In their response to the shooting, several far-right pundits have promoted an LGBT grooming conspiracy theory. I just want to say that sentence again. In their responses to the shooting, several far-right pundits have promoted an LGBT grooming conspiracy theory, as well as perpetuating moral panic. Have you heard of moral panic before? Because I hadn't.
I hadn't heard that phrase, but I know exactly what they are referring to.
So it is.
I got it. I know.
So I just want to read this because it was interesting to me.
I don't think I've ever been this angry in a case.
I guess it gets worse. So a moral panic is a widespread feeling of fear, often an irrational one. Think satanic panic in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That some evil person or thing threatens the values, interests, or well-being of a community or society. It is the process of arousing social concern over an issue, usually perpetuated by moral entrepreneurs and mass media coverage. Often irrational. Conservative media personality Tucker Carlson displayed a banner on his Fox News program, Tucker Carlson Tonight, that read, "Stop sexualizing kids," while later hosting a guest who said that mass shootings would keep happening, quote, until we end this evil agenda that is attacking children. And I just want to keep reminding everybody, this is in response to a mass shooting. This isn't just them being the fucking idiots that they always are being. This is what they had to say about innocent people getting gunned down. YouTube commentator Tim Pool responded by criticizing the venue's drag show performances, saying, quote, "We shouldn't tolerate pedophiles grooming kids. ClubQ had a grooming event." There was no kids there, my guy. No children. All adults. 21 and over. While right-wing commentators Matt Walsh, Candace Owens, Shia Raichik, and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene all continue to publish.
Oh my God!
I just jumped.
You did get it worse. You said it's going to get worse, and it did.
It's going to get worse. All continue to publish content targeting LGBTQ plus people, some of which focus specifically on the Colorado area, in response to a mass shooting where innocent people were murdered.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is the mistress of evil herself. I'm not going to say Satan because I don't think he would even bed that bitch, but she is the worst, one of the worst human beings ever to walk this planet, along with the frog-faced fuck.
I don't even, I'm not into politics at all. And before somebody comes out saying I'm targeting one part or the other, I think they all suck. I hate politics and I hate politicians. I think they're all trash. This is just the facts of what happened. And this is the facts of what these trash people said. I don't care what their political alignment is. If you said this about anybody, first of all, fuck you. But the fact that they could go and be able to go to sleep at night, and this is their response to a mass shooting where innocent people were murdered and hurt. Fuck you.
She harassed survivors of the Sandy Hook shooting.
Oh, that was her?
That was her. When they went to go advocate for gun laws to be changed. She went behind this 17-year-old boy who was brave enough to go advocate for this. She went behind him and was like, it didn't happen. You're lying. Like, she went and heckled this kid. She is one of the worst organisms to ever.
We desperately need term limits.
I need to make. I'm gonna be quiet now because I'm.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. God.
You're gonna want to take another drink.
Cool. All right.
After issuing a statement in which she offered her prayers to those affected by the shooting and called for the lawless violence to end, Representative Lauren Boebert, also Colorado, was accused of hypocrisy based on her history of anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric. Her past comments have included false grooming narratives and the litter box in schools hoax, and she's been criticized for blocking gun control laws. Have you heard of the litter box thing?
I have not.
Okay, this shit pissed me off. It's another rabbit hole I went down. So gender is a spectrum, right? When schools started allowing students to use whatever bathroom they wanted for their preferred gender pronouns, this thing started. And I'm not going to go too deep into it because I could do a whole other episode on just
that's
this
a whole
thing.
podcast.
So what they were, and I want to lead with saying this is a hoax. This happened in 0 schools in the world because it was here, Canada, Europe that they were saying this shit. And so, you know, so you have the transgender community, which is a community of people that are not aligned with like their born, you know, gender assignment.
Yeah, right.
That's that. All right. That's one thing. Over here, way over here, you have what is essentially cosplay, and you have the furries, right? It's people who, as a hobby, they like to dress up as an animal in their costume.
And that makes them happy.
These are, I can't put my hands far enough apart. I know people are listening and not watching. You have the transgender community, and then you have people whose hobby is to dress up on the weekend, which is essentially cosplay. These are two different things. These, I hesitate to call them people. These fucking assholes, they took these two communities and they try to shove them together by saying that if you are a transgender person, then you can also identify as an animal, which is what furries do. Furries don't identify as animals. They are still people that is just a hobby that they have on the weekends, and I'm going to keep saying it. So the litter box hoax.
Furries also, though, feel most, and if I'm wrong, I will retract my statement. But there are furries who identify as furries, and that makes them happy. And they do that at home, and they do that to be comfortable, and they feel like that's who they are. And they find other people who identify the same way, and they can have relationships that way. And that is completely fine, because guess what? They're happy. They're not inflicting any sort of ideology on anybody else. They're just doing what is who they are. And cosplayers, that is who they are, and it is fine. And it is, like you said, that they are not, we're all, it's okay.
So they tried to say a lot of people, sadly, including elected officials and celebrities and news personalities, try to say that if a student, because it's about the children, right? We have to protect the children. So it's always about the kids. If you have transgender students that are identifying as not their assigned gender at birth, then then you have the furry community, and they can identify as a cat. And this is where the litter box hoax comes in, where they're like, well, if you're allowing students to use whatever bathroom they want to use for their preferred gender, you're also putting litter boxes in bathrooms because students are identifying as cats and they're using the litter box. This went everywhere. And here's the thing. It was a school here in Colorado, because school administrators were going to schools and like, is there litter boxes there? They're like, no, why would we do that? One school had kitty litter in a bucket in a bathroom. And that was because school shootings are so common that they can shelter in place in the bathroom. And if they need to, if they're there for long enough, they could use the kitty litter if they run out of like everything else because they're sheltering in place because of a school shooting. Okay, that is the only, it was one school. It wasn't a kitty, it wasn't a litter box. It was just kitty litter to be used in an emergency. This went everywhere. And it was to trivialize the trans community by saying, well, if you can identify as this, then you can also identify as a cat. I don't know a lot about the furry community. One of my soldiers is a furry, him and his wife. They're great people. They're really sweet. They still identify as people. They don't identify as animals. And I have not found anything where outside of somebody having a legitimate mental illness that they identify as something that is not a human. And this, I went down a rabbit hole for like, and like, I'll get off the soapbox, but I just want to say this litter box bullshit about litter boxes and bathrooms is unequivocally unfucking true. It didn't happen. It hasn't happened. It is not happening. It is something that these assholes use to trivialize the trans community and these people trying to just live their lives.
I know we're going to get off this soapbox, and I have little baby students who very bravely tell their teacher, I don't like my name. I want to be called this name, and I am not these pronouns. I am these other pronouns. And as somebody who is, I love kids and I want them to be happy and healthy. And so my job is to say, okay, I want to make them happy and safe in my classroom. Because if they're not happy and safe in my classroom, they're not going to learn. But I worry for them, because what do they face when they leave my classroom, when they go to a bathroom, when they do anything like that, and they find a safe space? Just show some love. Show some, like, give them some room.
Yeah, create space.
Okay. Hold on. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're going to want to take another drink. Jenna Ellis, a former lawyer for Donald Trump, was criticized for saying that the 5 people killed during the shooting were, quote, now reaping the consequences of eternal damnation, because she claimed that there was no evidence, with my magical bunny ears, that the victims were Christian.
What the fuck does that have to do with anything?
I do not know. Because if they were
what?
If they were Christian, they wouldn't have been killed. And also, their religion matters even less than their gender identity than what they were doing at the club. These were 5 innocent people that were gunned down and 17 that were injured, and a whole other slew of people that were terrorized. Far-right provocateurs, am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
Including Jack Posobiec, questioned Richard Fierro's presence at the drag show, while others on the far right called Fierro a, quote, groomer and a, quote, F word. And I'm not going to say it.
No.
Simply because he and his family were at ClubQ. Analysis published by the Institute for Strategic Dialogue has estimated that online usage of the terms pedophile and groomer increased sharply in the days following the shooting, as part of far-right and neo-Nazi celebration of an apologia for the massacre. I also had to look this up. An apologia, and I'm probably saying it wrong, is a formal defense of an opinion, position, or action. So they're defending this shooting. The Department of Homeland Security also reported in a bulletin published on November 30th that online extremists praised the actions of the shooter. A significant rise in homophobic and transphobic posts following the shooting has been tracked by LGBTQ plus advocates both in far-right forums such as Gab and in more mainstream social media such as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. On November 14th, 2022, several survivors of the mass shooting presented their testimony to the United States House Committee on Oversight and Reform. The witnesses placed blame for the attack on hateful rhetoric, calling it the direct cause of the massacre, and also warned of the dangers of hate speech, saying that it is damaging even in the absence of explicit calls for violence. At the hearing, ClubQ owner Matthew Haynes pushed back at Republican politicians, saying, quote, I know that we, our ClubQ community, are in the thoughts and prayers of so many of you. Unfortunately, these thoughts and prayers alone are not saving lives. They're not changing the rhetoric of hate. Haynes also read aloud examples from some of the hundreds of the hateful messages received following the shooting, including one that said, quote, "The shooter was doing God's work." Survivor James Slow said that LGBTQ plus issues should not be politicized and urged respect for basic human rights. Said, quote, "Outside of these spaces, we are continually being dehumanized, marginalized, and targeted. The fear-based and hateful rhetoric surrounding the LGBTQ plus community, especially around trans individuals and drag performers, leads to violence." And that is the case of the ClubQ shooting. And I had some background about the shooter's family and childhood. I really just didn't give a shit about him.
No, we're not going to go there. I agree with you. Like, why?
No.
Why? My theory is, here's my theory. And I was thinking about it as you were talking. This piece of shit. I find it hard to believe that he was so hateful towards LGBTQ plus individuals. What I think is that he was so mad about being rejected, ignored, possibly an incel.
Mm-hmm.
And he just wanted to be the next mass shooter, as he said. And what better way to do that than to target an already targeted and marginalized population of persons? And then you get them into a club where they're congregated. And that's what he went after. That's where he could have gained the most notoriety. That's where he could be talked about the most and revered the most in all of these 4chan and all of those nasty, disgusting, poisonous places. Granted, he was part of the LDS community. And now he's going by they, them.
Now you want to be in a community that you targeted.
I just think that he's and that further supports my theory, because now he wants to be part of them. So now that gives him more notoriety, more headlines, more neon signs, more highlighting in his name, where in reality he needs to be thrown in a deep, dark hole, locked up, concrete over it, and thrown into the depths of the ocean. That's where his key needs to be.
There was a mass shooting in Canada, and I want to say 2018. I want to cover that too. But what the Canada legal system and what the Canadian media did is I think it was a guy. His name was never released. Nobody knows who he is. He is John Doe. He is even podcasts that cover it. He is John Doe. His picture isn't out there. And I really do think that a lot of these mass shooters, it obviously comes from a place of hate and intolerance, but it also comes from they want to be famous.
Yes. And I think
take that away.
I think that was his motivation.
Yeah.
I think automatically he probably, well, not automatically, I shouldn't use that word. I think possibly innately he had some very hateful characteristics and features about him, and he chose to direct that hate towards a group that would give him the most notoriety. And I do have to amend that by saying how disgusting it is that he would feel that the LGBTQ plus community would give him the most notoriety. But let me just say that I'm a member of the El Paso community, and we have one of the most horrific mass shootings by the El Paso Walmart shooter, and his whole goal was to target the Hispanic and Mexican population that we have in El Paso, and that was his goal. And so it's equally disgusting. equally disgusting, and it's mind-blowing, and it's
how great would it be? And this is just me going like really dark. If the punishment fit the crime, where it's like, hey, so, and I flip-flop with the death penalty a lot, for many reasons. But if it was, okay, well, we've decided that the death penalty is going to get enacted. We're going to put you into this warehouse and somebody's coming after you and they're going to shoot you. And you get to experience the terror that you inflicted on so many people before you're shot in the fucking face.
Yep.
I know that wouldn't bring anybody back and that wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't fix the way that this country talks about the LGBTQ plus community. It wouldn't fix the fucking hateful and harmful and violent things that are said about them. But that would make me feel better.
Thank you, Randy, for
yeah, that was a dark one.
That I think that I've never been so angry in one of our cases that one didn't. I think
well, because I generally, like I said, I'm not a big news person. I was here when this happened. I had to call all of my soldiers to make sure that they were okay, that they, because we did, not mine, but there was soldiers in my unit that were there that experienced this. They were luckily unharmed physically, but so I'd obviously heard about it, and I'd heard that the red flag laws, but you hear, surface level, you hear things. And then I dove into it and I was like, oh no, they really should have taken his fucking guns away.
Wow. And if you want to consider just also race in this type of case, had Aldrich, fuckface, been black or brown, it would have been a very different story.
Yeah.
But Mormon, white, male, and then mom and grandma are like, oh, it's okay, we're not gonna, that's fine. But you cannot deny the fact that had he been anything other,
an hour-long stand-up with SWAT where he live streamed it,
he might not even been alive.
Yeah, that's where my train of thought goes.
He might not have even been alive. And I'm a mom, I'm an educator, and all I want to do is protect my babies, and I use all of my energy and my cellular ATP to just protect my kids. And I don't talk a lot about my kids, but this hits home. And I feel like now I have like a bread box of concrete in my stomach, and it's horrific. And
I apologize in advance to Pedro if you start yelling at him, because I was yelling at Eduardo for like an hour yesterday. I was like, you hear about this shit? These fucking people? He's like, yes, that, because obviously he was here too. So we knew, like I said, we knew surface level, but there's a mass shooting in a gay club.
That's what I knew. That's what I knew was surface level, because it happens so much. Especially 2023 now, we are at a level of mass shooting that we've never seen before.
And I didn't write the stats down. In 2022, there was, I want to say 385 mass shootings in the US for 2022. By March of 2023, where we were at 177.
Like it's gonna exceed it.
I don't know what the right answer is for it. It's not something I'm going to get into on a public forum.
No.
But as somebody that is, pro-gun, I own guns, I go to the range, they need to do something. Everybody should not have the right to a gun, because people cannot handle it. And if you have the capacity in you for indiscriminate violence against innocent people, and you have proven that, and you have shown that, then you should not be allowed to own anything that can do mass damage to a group of people. Like, you don't get a fucking car. You don't, that hammer's too heavy. You don't get that either. Go fucking sit in a padded room, you piece of shit. That was a heavy one.
Thanks for listening, everybody. hope you come back next time. Yeah. Wow.
The real quick, the link for the GoFundMe for ClubQ, they're trying to do a memorial for the 5 fatalities and the 17 people that were injured, it's the first link in the show notes. So go donate if you can. Every little bit helps.
Yes.
Be a good ally, be a vocal ally.
If you see something, say something. If you're worried, if you see something concerning, talk to somebody, bring it to authorities, bring it to the right people, and don't give up. Don't stop. Don't put your hands in the air and go, well, like
thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers. If you're the mom or the dad or the brother or the sister, like, please don't be polite. Be aggressive and say this. Maybe aggressive is not the right word. Be vocal, and you could save them. You could save them. You could save their future. You could, and by saving their future, you could be saving a lot of lives, and a lot of heartache, and a lot of blood. Just please be vigilant. Don't put your head in the sand, guys. Just don't. It's too we risk too much by ignoring. Don't ignore it.
Yes.
Just
speak up. Well, thanks for listening.
Now that guys. I'm sufficiently angry, I wish I was in kickboxing or something, because I just want to go
punch something. I'm gonna go.
I'm gonna go run.
Go hug the dog. Go hug Coco.
Okay.
Well,
I'm gonna look at Coco's sweet face.
Until next time, we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We're on YouTube. You can watch the loveliness that is going on these videos.
You can watch my face get progressively redder as I get madder.
And hopefully Sunny can join us next time with her she's a little more comedic than she's a little more lighthearted. So hopefully she can bring
I know we need the palate cleansers back.
We really do. We really do. Sunny,
we miss you.
Save us. All right, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.